Good afternoon, Abbotsford residents. I'm Mr. Pelican. I'm running for the mayor of Abbotsford to bring the RCMP in. Forensic audit the city books, and I showed you all the jobs in the organized crime. Today, it's no shock, nobody's shocked that Norm Lipinski, Chief Officer Norm Lipinski, Surrey's police chief, has been let go. And we know the scandal that played him for preferential treatment as a police chief. Under the RCMP, there was no preferential treatment. This is what took place here in Abbotsford on Mike de Jong, allowed to have a party on Bell Road with elite rich class people that didn't want to be charged or publicly scandaled and moved the police from going out there. So what do I want to tell Abbotsford residents how this happened, this firing? The police board in Surrey took immediate action to remove him. And I don't think they owe anybody an apology. But what is different from that police board to this police board, I want to tell you. Here on my Abbotsford police board, why Mike Sir was allowed to cover an attempted murder, Bob Rich was allowed to jump on cop cars, and the heinous acts were taking place, was because Mike de Jong, Henry got to point the police board. Then Henry used Pam to point one, and then when Henry was the mayor, he pointed one, and you saw him when he loaded Mark Warkentine. And our police board that controls the police chief from getting fired, that the mayor, Henry Brown, needed to use, he controlled the most vital situation of the police, the board itself. When you controlled the board, you controlled everything. And this is why the board didn't take swift action to go after Bob Rich or Mike Sir or Keelan Olenoff or anywhere, because the board was under Henry's thumb, controlling and manipulating the board. Something that's not in Surrey under that Surrey mayor. So I wonder if Bob Rich is laying on the door of the Surrey mayor asking for that position. I wonder if the loser Mike Sir is laying on the board and phoning David Eby to get that position now that chief's been let go. But also what is here in Abbotsford on our board and what is taking place is Amric Moran. This is how the officers were allowed to threaten. This is how Mike Sir could not take statements with his police officers, and they could control it. Henry controlled the vital situation of the Abbotsford police, and its main pulse was the police board, and they loaded them. They weren't independent, and they loaded them all in there. And this is what is different from the Surrey to our board. This is why the Abbotsford men and women could keep their jobs. They weren't terminated, and they were not fired. There is no saving the Abbotsford private police. You saw the job lifts, you saw the organized crime. Controlling, it's not on a broad scale. They're controlling everybody and everything. They're controlling the vital things. Control the board, you control every officer. You could send them out at night, you could control everything. You could control the police chief from not getting fired, or the board not stepping in and ordering the Police Complaints Commission from Victoria to come in and investigate. He controlled the vital situation. And you could go through them podcasts where Mike posted one as the MLA, Henry got him. Then Henry used Pam to point one, loading the board. And then when Henry came in, he pointed himself. And this is why I told you that with Amric Moran on there, and Amric Moran knowing what he's doing, and knowing Colin Watts had open invitations, knowing Colin Watts now as a part of the board that they smashed my camera and my phone, and he has took no actions to even meet with me, even on the weekends. Gee, Colin, I'll invite you to my house. He controlled the central system. But these men that run around in Abbotsford that said they're undercover officers, they're investigating officers, can never save her. They cannot live in our community or be trusted in our community, and they can never work for this company, because as a detective, as an officer, you know your first response is to the general public. Today I was out with some politicians all over Abbotsford, and they're ganging the general public because as I push down, they're getting more violence. Today down across from the Keg restaurant, they ganged very quickly on an African-American woman, big muscle boys pushing down. I'm going to put a stop to it. I'm going to transformate the RCMP in here. That's why this didn't happen in Surrey. There was no preferential treatment. And I believe the scandal in Surrey was the police chief. There was a party at some golf course, and there was supposed to be road checks to protect the general public's safety. And somebody phoned him to remove it because they were having big, rich, elite people there. This is what happened at Mike de Jong's place on Bale Road. And this is how the Abbotsford police could get away with what they're doing when people ask me, well, how come the chief is not under investigations? How's that? You control the board, the central system. Under me, there won't be no more police board. It'll be the RCMP reading across that. Under me, every officer that tells you they got 20 years, they were a drug officer and they're very important to this system, we can ask them front right, you're very important. You know the criminal code, you know to do investigations. Why didn't you take witnesses? Why didn't you go out? Why didn't you go out when Mr. Pelican was hit and run? Why didn't you? Now they're going to tell you it's all the upper management. That shit just doesn't work anymore. We have to let them go. Even their wives are going to look them in the face and say, you garbage trash man, you did this. There was no criminal reports. There was no cameras. There was no hospital records, and their wives will see that. This garbage, Colin Watts, is hanging on by his last legs with his stuff because he knows that I know, and this is why his guy's been attacking me, that the board itself controlled it. And the board was always under Henry's thumb. His impulse is always under him. That's why there's no investigations on Henry. Nothing and no witnesses or nothing for insider trading or Dave Sidhu's land or anything, or Gabriel or anything at the city. And I knew this from day one, that Henry had this board under his thumb. And as long as he controlled the board, that is why I made podcasts, to try to override the board in their criminal acts to bring the RCMP in. I bet you Amric Moran, I bet you this, if Colin Watts and his leading investigators like Paul Walker and Amric Moran and Ross Siemens want to feel what it feels like, I think you should phone the police chief of Surrey and ask him what he's going through right now in his stomach, how his visits to the toilet bowl are, because that stuff catches up with you. This is how these boys were allowed to race the Dodge Chargers, threaten me, threaten Mogale, and go after it because Henry figured nobody would be smarter that he controlled the board of Abbotsford Police. This is how this shit could do what it was doing every night. Controlling the central points, which I showed you. He used the Punjabi newspaper through Dave Sidhu, and he used his ties through Rick Rakes, and then Vicky Hopes and Ken, and told them he would bankrupt them. He put them on their belly, then controlled the board, then ordered the councils for special gifts to blackjack the councils, and set up a rich elite mob to attack Abbotsford. Now, Colin Watts, I'm going to tell you, and I'll make it clear. You made no effort at all, and I would have thought that you would have came forward and said the board's handcuffing you and everything else. This ain't a police force. This is garbage man now doing damage control and hanging on, because under this one, this wasn't like Surrey. There's a little bit difference, but he still endangered the general public's and put the public at risk. This was attempted murders. This was purposely being blocked to do criminal reports, investigation reports, leave people for dead. Then they went out as steroid juice pumping muscle boys under that badge and came to my house to threaten me. Came all over. It's the wisdom and knowledge of the RCMP. Knew that somebody at the top's holding it. Henry had him under his thumb all the way. And this is how he did that. And why was this taking place? Why would a man do this? I showed you how he loaded through Mike de Jong, he loaded through Pam. So the question now, is Colin Watts ready to flee with Paul Walker and ask Brenda Locke that he wants the position in Surrey? But I think Bob Rich will be laying there waiting for his position to set up his organized ring again and bring these guys over there. It ain't. It needs to all go back to the RCMP so these political politicians that are attacking our community end. But this one here calls for annihilation of every man and woman that serve in that company. It calls for my general community to see, and everybody, that they did in the shadows of the night. Make no mistake. There is no law enforcement here. They use their uniform, they use their shit with their courts and their sympathy and their ties to the political things. But that police board was handpicked and hand-loaded. And this is how this took place for years and years and years. This is why when the RCMP mission put us all in front to talk to Mike Sir, Mike Sir wasn't investigated and let go and kicked out. Because who was there? Henry picked Mark Warkentine and then rolled him over for city council. This, not only that, calls for the Abbotsford Police Board to be criminally charged and removed because they were under Henry's thumb. Now, I wonder if Colin Watts would have did criminal reports with his legit guys, and he would have did it legit, and he would have did that there, if all this would have been done legit and proper, Mike Sir would be doing life in prison. And so would a lot of officers like Keelan Olenoff, the man that smashed my camera, the people that changed me and that. But Colin Watts bet the same thing as every else buddy bet, that he's a vital to this community. I can use advertising. I can pull myself up through the connections. Brad Viss is a superstar through Ed Fast and everything. So Colin, let me tell you, let me give you some experience quickly. Brad Viss is being propped up by Ed Fast. And wherever Ed tells Brad to go, he's got to go, even if it's in other people's riding. If he tells Brad to go in your bed, he'll be there, okay? And this is well known. Carney knows it. Even Pierre Poilievre knows it. But what needs to be done here is Ed Fast is out of juice. Everything Ed Fast has touched has failed. Mike de Jong's endorsement failed. Ian Black's endorsement, which he got Brad Viss to endorse, is failed. Just complete failed. And Ed is desperate to get anybody in, so investigations into Devon Roy, Pacific Peak Homes and jobs and lifted. This is a mob. This is too big for these losers, complete garbage losers that pick up prostitutes, smash our community. So what I want to close here today with is this. If you're a political politician and you're on the level like you got in, is in NDP, and are as a conservative, and you're well recognized, they don't fool with you because they know that the scandal on them will get them stepped out immediately, and you'll see this and then you get out. But if you're an actually a resident, and you step forward for the law to help you on one of them, what they have done, they block you. They block you. They don't recognize you. Then they block the community and they threaten the community from coming forward. And then what doesn't apply for our community is criminal reports, investigation reports, and all this doesn't take place. And then they pull favors when you go to the MLAs because they all were working together as a group, tipping each other off. And the mayor who controlled the police then used the police to threaten you rather than come out and take reports and talk to witnesses. So you leave town so they could keep themselves in a job. This ain't going to happen. I don't want to hear my chief crying that he's got family and his guys live here. I don't want to hear my chief crying that his guys are put in jeopardy and the task force and going to get exposed. These men have to be gone. Until my chief recognizes that they're all screw-ups, they're incapable of being trusted, and they're all running around with a badge brutalizing this town, and realizes that they caused this chief this grief. And their only way to come forward and say the RCMP have to take it over. There is no way that they can be trusted to police Abbotsford. That is guaranteed. So they see the heat from me. They know I'm politically tied now. They know I'm about my community. They know they threaten the residents. And they keep it up because it's about them. They know I'll dismantle them. They know the general public will see that they lost the trust to police and the babies got to go home to their wives. And I bet you every one of their wives are looking them in the face and asking them, where's the criminal reports? Why didn't you talk to the ADA? Why didn't you bring them in? Why didn't you replace the cameras? Why didn't you go to White Rock? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you talk to all them witnesses? And they're going to tell you, my police board handcuffed me. And my loser mans need a job because my loser mans will never get qualified anywhere. So I bet you these men are already on the phone asking Mike Sir and Bob Rich, are you going to be the new chief of Surrey? Are you going to take it over so we can come in there quickly? I want to make sure Brenda Locke and the Surrey RCMP understand Mike Sir can never see a position in police. And he'll probably be pressuring David Eby through Bob Rich and trying to get loaded in there quickly. This has to come to an end. And Amric Moran knows better than this. And Colin Watts knows better than this. And this is what happened on my community. So under me, I will not walk in there with Abbotsford residents. When this settles, I will make sure that it's a live podcast of what took place with all of them. Running around town, pulling people over and now beating the people and ganging them. This is just unacceptable. This is just trash. This is garbage. This is just disgusting. And no politician should ever back this up. And you can see even Corky and these guys have distanced themselves. This is just complete trash. What man goes and picks a prostitute up and runs risk of taking disease home on company time? What man goes and threatens people? What man puts a task force in front of people? What man belittles somebody because he's got a badge? What man sits in front of a guy's home and invades privacy? What man endangers the whole public when an MLA is drinking and throwing a party? Which man goes out and covers criminal reports? Only in the Abbotsford shit, garbage, in the garbage. And I told by Tim Hortons and everybody, the chiefs telling him you got to get out there. They're embarrassed to go through their drive-ins because they know the whole world is going to watch them, and this has to take place on this level, because the whole world now, when you move around, your neighbors will know you and everybody, and they'll kick you, and they're going to kick you very, very severe. This was a buddy system, a bunch of bullies, and they had the opportunity when Abbotsford went to them, and they went to them on many occasions, and now they're just trying to save the company. They know it's got to roll over to the RCMP. So I bet you today, Colin Watts is pooping really bad after he saw what happened to Surrey. And he's probably on the phone to David Eby too. What happened in Surrey was the mayor didn't have control of the board and was lifting lands and doing deals. This is what happened here with Amric Moran, Mark Workentine and everything. Henry controlled the board. This is why the police chief Mike Sir didn't get brought up on charges for covering Henry's hit and run. And when I knew that, I took it with Abbotsford residents to the city councillors. And Darren Brown made me clear that Henry wanted you upstairs through Nancy Friesen because he controlled the city councils and blocked the auditorium. And he controlled the board. I bet you now, Colin Watts, if you would have followed protocol and procedures, your guys wrecked your life, your chance of a good paycheck, paying your bills and everything. And I bet you, if you got kids and wife, she's going to come to you like Henry's wife and say, what the shit in hell did you do for your man? These ain't men. These are boys. These are the Abbotsford police boys. Under my mayorship and my leadership, I recognize right away we got to roll the RCMP in here very, very fast. And I'm trying to get them faster by making all politicians aware of it, but I got this suspicion that David Eby's got his hands in here because of all the money being dumped in illegally, the $500 million by UFB, Dave Sidhu's property and everything. They got to up that ante now, and Colin Watts is going to have him in the briefing and tell him. But these were the upper boys, the boys up the top that figured they were smarter, and then they went to bat for an elite mob. And then what happened under the elite mob, Abbotsford residents went to the RCMP. So I tell Colin Watts, every one of them guys, no matter what they say they are, investigators, task force, drug officers, are pieces of shit. And I stand on the world's largest stage because they covered up the attempted murder on my life. Then they came out to my house and threatened me. And then they kept it up 24 hours and them videos are made to run me out of town. Now it's equal, fair to fair. They're going to lose their jobs. They're going to do that. So I wonder how many in your office crying that they're very vital to this company. If I was you, Colin Watts, I'd be tossing their houses, tossing their assets and see, because they had to take big money for Henry Brown through the back door. I'm live, Abbotsford, British Columbia, Abbotsford, BC, Amric Moran. This is what Darren Brown led me by the hand and showed me, and this is why the police chief in Surrey is out.